Every team, every topic, everywhere. This is Believe.
Ich warte seit Wochen auf diesen Tag und tanz vor Freude über den Asphalt. Als wär's ein Rhythmus, als gäb's ein Lied, das mich immer weiter durch die Straßen zieht. Komm dir entgegen.
Hello and welcome to Gegenpressing, the Bundesliga podcast. I'm Manu and Stefan, and I'm almost messed up the intro again, Stefan.
Almost out of breath.
Out of breath, yeah, I'm exhausted. This is my final Bundesliga tour stop of this trip in Germany. I'm in Freiburg, beautiful Breisgau, gorgeous, where we did a quick walk from the train station to a hotel and just can't wait to actually see the city. Gorgeous place. Have you been to Freiburg?
No, I haven't.
Stefan?
No, unfortunately, no.
Oof.
I'm not hipster enough to go to Freiburg. That's the thing. I'm too busy covering the big teams.
Although they do call this part of Germany the Scotland of Germany.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it's because there's a bunch of penny pinchers here.
Sounds about right.
I'm not sure if that applies to. I guess you guys have university towns like St. Andrews and maybe Edinburgh too.
Yeah, we definitely do.
But a little bit hipsterish, maybe.
I live. They're actually more kind of like quite posh. Like St. Andrews is like quite a wealthy town, so it's a bit different. But we do have like parts of Glasgow and Edinburgh are definitely very kind of university driven and very hipster.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Fair enough. But enough about Freiburg. This is the Bundesliga preview show. We have a couple big games this weekend, and so we should probably get to them after this episode of the Gegenpressing podcast is brought to you by BetOnline. Football is back, and BetOnline remains your number one source for all your football betting needs this season. You'll find the latest odds, matchup info, player news, and game trends. And as your continued source for all sports wagering info, BetOnline features live betting, free contests, live scores, and giveaways all season long. Always the fastest and easiest way to bet all your favorite sports and events like MLB, MMA, tennis, boxing, and even golf. Head to betonline.ag, betonline.ag to join and receive your 100% welcome bonus with your first deposit. Make sure to use promo code BELIEVE, BLEAV. Believe, BLEAV, to receive your rewards. BetOnline, where the game starts. So this show, and we should probably mention this, and we should probably mention it every week, is brought to you in partnership with Get German Football News, who have been very kind to post our predictions on their homepage and the link to this podcast. So head over to their homepage. It's very good. It has a lot of in-depth Bundesliga news, and they also kind of square us off in terms of our prediction game. I'm not sure who's leading this week. I know I was leading last week. I'm not sure I still am.
I'd be amazed if I took the lead last week because I'm pretty sure I got every prediction wrong.
Yeah. Last week was tough. It was just like
it was carnage,
insane,
absolute carnage. But that's what the Bundesliga is at the best of times, to be fair. So
let's see if we get all the results wrong again this week.
Great start to prediction show, just talking about how terrible we are.
Yeah. So on the top, Friday's game in Hoffenheim against Werder Bremen, high-flying Werder Bremen, and you wrote an excellent newsletter about them this week, which I really enjoyed, and everyone should be reading it. And I have this game as a 2-2 draw, just because I think Phil Krug and Dux can't help but scoring goals, but Hoffenheim have been pretty creative in the attack as well, so 2-2 draw for me.
Yeah, I've actually got the exact same one. I feel like we always do this every episode. It's always the first. It's always the first game. We always seem to predict the same ones. I found it very hard to differentiate between these two teams. They've both been playing very well. Werder Bremen have been quite good, particularly on the road. Hoffenheim have been quite good in general. can't pull them apart, but I think both teams will score goals. So, yeah, I've gone for 2-2 as well.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll see. Maybe we will both get that right. The next one, surprisingly, you picked as your match of the week, Leverkusen against Schalke. And I mean, it's obvious the big news this week. If you haven't listened to our midweek podcast, which is on the newsletter, Xabi Alonso is the new head coach of Leverkusen. I totally understand why you picked the style of the match of the week over the Klassiker and the Rhein Derby between Gladbach and Köln, because I think a lot of people will tune into this, and it doesn't clash with any of the other two games either. So, yeah, good for you. So I'm gonna let you lead the way here.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's pretty self-explanatory. Xabi Alonso's first game in charge of Leverkusen. I mean, I think it would have been a game to keep an eye on either way if Siona had kept his job, because it would have been a match which really kind of went on to define whether he kept or not. Turns out that Porto game was the one that did it for him, but I think you can still kind of flip it round and say, well, you know what, like, Leverkusen will obviously be hoping for a big reaction by bringing in Xabi Alonso. And the interesting thing, and we talked about this on the main show, or like the bonus show this week, in the terms that, you know, Alonso isn't a head coach who has been hired because he's a tactical genius. He hasn't been hired because he's come out of some prestigious coaching finishing school, you know, and he's like this kind of young unknown talent who could go on to become one of the best coaches in the world. They've hired him because he's a big name and he's hopefully going to inspire that team, and as such, there's kind of pressure on the team and him to kind of bounce back even more so, because if he was known more as a kind of tactical whiz, you'd be like, right, okay, well, it's going to take a couple of weeks for him to implement his system. But because he's basically known as this kind of big name, he'd kind of be you put more pressure on him and the team to kind of bounce back immediately. So that's kind of what I'll be keeping an eye on. And Schalke at home is probably as close a must-win as you're going to kind of get, or an easy start as you're going to get, because I just think Schalke have looked quite ordinary in recent weeks. So yeah, I'll be keeping an eye on this one, seeing if he changes anything, seeing if these players who've been really letting the team down this season miraculously bounce back. And as you said, can still take it in without missing any of the big games.
Yeah, what's your prediction?
Of course, good question. I've still gone for a Leverkusen win in this one. I think it's going to be quite narrow, to be honest with you. I've gone for 1-0, just because I'm not fully expecting this team to kind of suddenly kick into gear and, you know, suddenly become the Harlem Globetrotters. So, yeah, I've gone for 1-0 for Leverkusen.
So I've gone all out, and I'm saying huge response match by Leverkusen, 4-1 victory.
Wow. Okay, well, let's see what happens. It's going to be a Schalke win, isn't it?
I mean, yeah, I'm just really curious to see what style of football Alonso is actually going to play.
Yeah.
And that is great. We don't know much about him. I mean, I think we get sort of a little bit of an idea, right, from who's coached him and what sort of player he was. I reckon he's going to go very Spanish on us. But that's fine. I'm here to see it. I'm here to see it, and I think everyone should be tuning in. And as you said, a good shout for your match of the week. The next one is Mainz against Leipzig, and have gone for another big result here, Stefan. I went for a 4-0 Leipzig win based on what I've seen them do against Celtic. I think, although I kind of regret now not saying that Mainz might score because it's Leipzig. But either way, I'm sticking with 4-0. I'm saying Leipzig are going to win in a big way.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you in that regard. I thought Leipzig were very impressive in attacking sense against Celtic. Mainz haven't really been up to much at home this season, I must admit. They've been better on the road. So even though there's that kind of inclination that they could cause an upset, because that Leipzig defence is still troublesome, I've still gone for a pretty comfortable win for Leipzig. So I've got 2-0 for Marco Rosa's side.
Okay, either way, big win for them. That should help them close the gap to the top. Next, Bochum against Frankfurt. And I've gone for another decisive win here. This time 3-1 for Frankfurt. How do you see this match?
Yeah, I don't think this is much of a... I don't think this is very debatable, this game. Bochum have been terrible. They look in real trouble. And Frankfurt look pretty good in and around, specific games, and most specifically whenever I don't watch them. But they've been okay in the road. They've got 2 wins and a draw from the first 3 away games, and Bochum were once upon a time a very hard team to break down in the Bundesliga, but they're just not that case anymore. They've conceded 12 goals in the first 4 home games. I don't really see much changing in that regard, so I've gone for a 2-0 win for Frankfurt.
Yeah, pretty much two goal difference for both of us. Let's see who's getting it closer. The next one, Augsburg against Wolfsburg. I struggled here a little bit, Stefan, because I have a really hard time.
Because Augsburg are so amazing, and it's such a lovely place to visit.
Great. It's a beautiful city. Yeah, nice place on the way through Munich. It's only 45 minutes. It's all good things about Augsburg. You can say the same things about Wolfsburg. Just an hour drive away from Berlin.
Augsburg's routinely referred to as the Wolfsburg of Bavaria.
That's harsh. It is actually really nice. And that does have, actually, there is a parallel. There is a huge car manufacturer in Augsburg. MAN, the truck manufacturer, they're based out of there. Anyways, completely different story. I went for a 1-1 draw here. Pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a really tight game too. There's something about Wolfsburg that just kind of makes me think they're going to edge it, though. I didn't actually watch the game against Stuttgart, so I can only say so much, but it looked as though they really put a decent effort in to kind of claw that result in, and showed a bit of fight from a Wolfsburg team a squad that just kind of looked like they were just really, really willing to just kind of down tools and wait for Niko Kovac to lose his job. So there's a kind of bit of inspiration from last week, and Augsburg have been absolutely fine this season, but they haven't been very inspiring at all at home. They've only won 1 of 4 games, so I think it's going to be a really tight game. I wouldn't be surprised if it goes the other way, but right now I've got a 2-1 win for Wolfsburg.
Interesting. Yeah, Wolfsburg a little bit better since they made the changes with the sporting director, right? Announced that Schmatke is leaving. I think that's helped them a little bit. Dortmund Bayern, the big one, the Klassiker. So hear me out here. For years, I've predicted that Dortmund will finally beat Bayern. They haven't done so in 8 games. And this is a huge match. Both of them excellent in the Champions League midweek, right? Dortmund with a fantastic win against Sevilla, one that probably a lot of us didn't see coming. So, look, I'm saying Bayern are going to win this game 2-0 easily, because I'm sick and tired betting on Dortmund and then seeing them lose. So I'm betting on Bayern, and I think they're going to win this game 2-0.
Interesting. I actually have kind of come to the same conclusion, actually. I think Bayern will win 2-1. There's certainly enough to be kind of excited about Dortmund, especially in that result against Sevilla. It looked as though that front line was finally clicking into gear. Moukoko looked great. Adeyemi looked great. Even Julian Brandt looked great. And I think most importantly, Jude Bellingham was kind of allowed to play this more kind of attacking role. And actually, having done the extra podcast last night, I kind of found some stats to kind of back it up. And if you kind of look at Bellingham's kind of average position, he's basically the 3rd or 4th highest player on the pitch behind that front 3. Wow. So he was really playing as that kind of number. I know he still kind of played as a number 10, but he was certainly moving forward more as a number. Sorry, I know he was still technically playing as number 8. He was still kind of allowed to play as a number 10. So that'll be interesting to see how he does against Bayern. But there's still a little too many kind of ifs in this result, in this kind of regard for me for Dortmund. As good as Moukoko has been playing recently, it's still a concern that they're basically relying on this kid probably to go up against that Bayern defense. I wouldn't, that's a huge task to ask of Moukoko. And of course, despite that result against Sevilla, I think another thing that's worth pointing out from that match is that Sevilla actually had a higher XG from that game than Dortmund. And I think that really goes some way to showing that, even though Dortmund were great in attack, Sevilla also really should have scored a couple of goals. That defense was still far too porous, far too wide open at times. Schlotterbeck, I have to borrow a term from Andy Brassel, who summed it up perfectly on his on the Continent podcast, where he said Schlotterbeck's a great player, still learning to become a good defender. And I think that sums him up really well, because the ball at his feet, moving forward, he's great. He's really good in terms of build-up play for Dortmund, but defensively, he's still a little all over the place, and he was caught under the ball for the Sevilla goal. So Sula still hasn't really kind of kicked into gear yet either. Mats Hummels might get rushed back, and he's not entirely fit. So I really do kind of fear for this team defensively against Bayern, who look like they've kind of jumped back into top gear. So I unfortunately think Bayern will probably win this. I've gone for 2-1, which suggests like an easy win for Bayern. Oh no, it suggests a tight game. I think it will be an easy win for Bayern. I think Dortmund might get a goal, just because Bayern defensively are a bit iffy as well. Lucas Hernandez is out, Manuel Neuer's a bit all over the place, blah blah blah. But I don't think they'll. I really don't know if they'll be able to make this a really difficult game for Bayern. I'd love it if they did, but as you said, I'm kind of giving up betting on Dortmund in this fixture.
So everyone bet on Dortmund because they're going to win it now. Couple things to point out.
Do you know what though? It's best case scenario for us because if Bayern win, then we look like we know what we're talking about. But if Dortmund win, we get so much to talk about.
Yeah, exactly, and we get a really exciting league as well on top of that. Couple things to point out. There is a chance Marco Reus is back, which is the miracle cure of all the miracle cures. Kobel could be back, and Bayern are dealing with a COVID outbreak that is kind of escaping the media at the moment, but we don't actually know how many players are going to be. Well, we know Müller and Kimmich are probably not playing based on what happens in training on Friday. If they can't train on Friday, Nagelsmann has said in his post-match on Tuesday that he's not going to use them simply because they need to then await the cardiological examination, right, which you have to do after every COVID case.
Right.
Because you can't, normally for athletes, you have to wait for 10 days to exercise again. If you don't, you have to do a cardiological exercise. Not exercise.
Yeah, test.
Test, sorry. Yes, that's the one I'm looking for. And, it just looks like that those two might be missing. And depending on what else is happening with this outbreak, who knows, right?
Unless... And bear with me here, this is one of these kind of fake injuries that Bayern players just so happen to get when there's international breaks on, and they just fancy a week off. Bayern obviously had a bit of an easy game during the midweek there against Victoria Pilsen. Possibly they've just been kind of making up a few things, giving the guys a week off ahead of this game. Would it be beyond the realms of possibility?
We'll find out Saturday.
All I'm saying is if Kimmich and Thomas Müller are in the starting lineup and they look in perfect condition, it would not surprise me.
Well, Müller apparently doesn't have symptoms. I'm just basing this on what I've been told. I don't know. I'm not a doctor. Don't go by my advice. If you get COVID, get yourself checked out before you start running, biking, etc. again. And don't say, I listened to Manu on the podcast and he said that Müller can play the next day. Just saying. But yeah, I think that's just an interesting one to kind of keep your eyes on. But it should be an interesting match and we'll see how it ends. There is another big game this weekend as well. And that's Gladbach against Köln, which is oddly enough the Sunday 3:30 fixture, which is an odd time to put this game because in the Rhine, that's a big derby. It was for a while supplanted by Gladbach against Leverkusen and then Leverkusen against Köln, right? Because simply Leverkusen were the biggest team or the most successful team, not the biggest, in that region. But Gladbach and Köln in particular have been pretty good this year. This is going to be a fascinating match to watch. And if it wasn't on the same weekend as the Klassiker or Alonso being hired, that probably would be our match of the week, right? So I went here for another high-scoring draw. I said 2-2 because I think these are two teams. Gladbach looked in disarray last week. Köln can always score, and I think this is going to be a fun game with a 2-2 draw in the end.
I've got it for the exact same result. Yeah, I was really quite tempted to go for a Gladbach win in this game until last weekend, obviously, when they really did just get completely pulled apart against Werder Bremen. And it really made me think that, Cologne could maybe do something similar to them. It's a derby. Cologne haven't been exactly great on the road, but they've also been undefeated as well. They've kind of picked up one win in 3 draws. Gladbach have been decent at home as well. So I think there's going to be two teams kind of going head to head, kind of level in terms of form. Maybe you could argue Gladbach have the better team, and they have been playing well this season. I don't want to put too much weight on that Bremen result because, as I wrote about this week, Bremen just have this kind of incredible ability, just really blitz teams in the first 30 minutes, and it catches so many teams by surprise, and that's exactly what they did against Gladbach. So, I'd maybe kind of point to that fixture being a result of Bremen's success rather than Gladbach's failure. So I wouldn't read too much into them losing that game. So I still think they should be going into this match thinking we should definitely win this, but it's a derby. I've gone for 2-2 as well. I think it should be a really great game.
Yeah, me too. I'm really looking forward to it. It should be a good match to watch. I'm sadly missing it, so I have to back watch it because I will be on a plane flying back to Canada. Anyways, the next match, second to final match that we're going to talk about is Hertha Dumpster Fire Berlin against Freiburg. I was calling them a dumpster fire because they have a 374 million euro mountain to climb. Wow, I mean, this is a story and a half that we should probably further discuss if we can next week, because Lars Windhorst, their investor, is pulling out and wants to sell his shares back to the club, and I cannot see Hertha come up with 374 million euros. And you know what else I can't see them come up with? A win against Freiburg. I think they're going to lose this game 2-0.
Interesting. I'm going to kind of push against this. I think Freiburg will still win this game because I still think, they're probably one of the best teams in the league. Christian Streich obviously probably won't be there, I'm assuming, since he'll still have COVID. Although he might be back by that point.
If he tests negative, I think he's allowed to test himself free, like Urs Fischer just did, right?
Yeah, I suppose so. I actually think Hertha have actually kind of managed to turn things around on the pitch. Whether what you just mentioned there, that kind of bombshell this week, will get in the way of their on the pitch performances, we'll kind of have to wait and see, really. But I actually think they have been quite good. They've obviously picked up a decent 2-0 win against Augsburg, and then they've kind of grinded out really decent draws against Hoffenheim, Mainz, and Leverkusen, which, by no means easy teams to play against right now. So I think Hertha deserve a bit more credit, and if they were playing maybe on any of like maybe another 10 or 12 teams in the league this weekend, I probably would have backed them. But this Freiburg side look pretty awesome away from home. They look awesome in general. And I've gone for a narrow 2-1 win. I think it'll be a very tight game.
Yeah. I just think that story is, oh man, if you're a player, you got to worry about what's going on.
So do they have to pay that?
No, they don't. But if they want to get Windhorst out of the club, someone will have to come up with that money.
Yeah. Well, they might just say we'll pay you in time or something. You never know if this will impact immediately.
Or not.
Yeah.
Or maybe not pay him at all and just say, well, it's yours. Find a buyer. Find a buyer for your 64.7% of non-voting shares. Good luck. We'll go into more detail. I've written a lot on this for Forbes over the last few years, so I can provide a little bit more detail maybe next week. When we maybe also know a little bit more too. I think it is a fascinating story, and it tells you a lot about the investment landscape of the Bundesliga and why even more fans will probably be now against 50+1. But again, let's leave it for midweek. Stuttgart against Union Berlin. As you said, Urs Fischer back. He tested himself free and will be allowed to be on the sidelines. Union Berlin have to bounce back, and Stuttgart, under pressure, Pellegrino Matarazzo could be replaced by Adi Hütter. I've been reading today. I don't have any inside information on this, but find that interesting. I like Pellegrino a lot, though, Stefan. I think he's a good coach, but I think he may lose this game to Union Berlin. I went for a 3-1 win for Union.
Yeah, and I'm beginning to wonder if he's going to lose his job as well. He's done so well at Stuttgart, and they've gone through so much recently in terms of injuries and player sales, and there's a huge amount you're willing to forgive in that team just because of the kind of outside factors that he's had to put up with. But it just kind of feels like nothing's going right for Stuttgart this season. They've yet to win at home. That Wolfsburg result kind of felt like it was going to kind of define almost like a 6-pointer to an extent at the bottom of the table there. And for Wolfsburg to kind of come back after going behind, it just kind of made me think there's only so much we can do with there's only so much left to do with the Stuttgart side. So, I think Union Berlin will kind of have to work hard at it. They obviously lost to Frankfurt last weekend, so they'll have to kind of make sure they do bounce back. But I think this Stuttgart side are maybe one of the most beatable teams in the division right now. So I've gone for a 3-1 win for Union Berlin.
Yeah, same. 3-1. There we go. We'll see who's going to lead the prediction game over at Get German Football News after this. Yeah, exciting times.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too. This is going to be a fascinating match day. Anyways, I digress. As always, this show is brought to you by Bet Online. And please check out our newsletter. Give this podcast a rating if you like it. Give us feedback too. We can both be reached via the newsletter, via Twitter. And Stefan, anything else I need to mention?
I don't think so. All I would say is I'd like to say a thank you on behalf of our subscribers for all the extra work you've been doing this week. So Manu's been at 2 games, if I'm not mistaken, had pieces up on the website for it. So subscribers getting even more bang for their buck right now. Everyone seems to be enjoying it as well. So again, thank you for putting the hard miles in on the road and getting to these games for us.
Oh, it's been fun, and I think I wasn't sure how people would receive these pieces, but they seem to like them. So I think if I'm at games or maybe even some of the big games I watch on TV, I'm gonna keep doing them. I'm not gonna do it for every match or every match day, so don't get too used to them. But we'll definitely do them for the big occasions, I think, and when there's the right time for it. And I think that's probably going to be also a really good way for the newsletter to maybe cover the World Cup. Germany at the World Cup. So yeah, lots of ideas here, which direction we can take that. So keep your eyes on that. But yeah, thank you for reading them, and thank you. I'm glad that you guys really appreciate them. It means a lot, and the feedback has just been fantastic. So yeah, that's it. If you want to read those pieces, sign up. And until next week, auf Wiedersehen.
Ende in Sicht.
Thank you for listening to Believe. You can show support to your host by subscribing to the show and giving us a 5-star rating on your preferred platform. Check us out at Believe.com and search for BLEAV on YouTube.